Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, Profiler here, and welcome. Welcome to today's show on Lady Bird Lake. A lot of bodies, a lot of dead people down there have been found in the last number of years in that lake. Too many, way too many. And pretty much the show today is focused on what's going on. What's going on down there? I'm not hearing anything on really or seeing anything in any news channels on what's going on, what happened, and it's kind of bothering me. It's kind of bothering me. What are we supposed to do? Just wait for the next body to float up there, and then we start all over again, and it just continues. I mean, people that have interest in this or concerns need to speak up. So that's what our show's on today. Bodies of Lady Bird Lake. What's going on? Okay. And we are thrilled today to have Private Investigator Dustin Ranck with us. He's been down there a number of times, knows like the back of his hand. He's really been investigating the situation. And I definitely want to hear from him today. That's, what's of most interest to me. And so hopefully, we'll give you a good show here, and we'll try and get some answers. And we want your feedback. Please like us if you like us, and subscribe. But we want your feedback, want your comments. Very interested in what you have to say, because a lot of you are from that neck of the woods down there, and you're living with it. Okay. At this point, I want to send our deepest condolences out to the victims and their families. Very, very upsetting. And also, I want to mention Thrive. I'm recovering a cocaine addict, and I want to put our free channel out, Thrive, load it with education, for any of the families out there that are suffering from addictive illness, or if you yourself have addictive illness, you might find our Thrive channel very interesting. We have a lot of education put up there. I've done a lot of work on it. Our team has done a lot of work on it. Please check it out if you have anything going on, or you want to be more informed on the biggest serial killer, which is drug addiction. Okay, with that being said, thank you. Also, too, I do have my book for those of you that are interested. I can't thank you all enough for your great comments, great feedback on my book, Discovering Lazarus, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly of John Kelly. Thank you very much, folks. Really appreciate you. And Dustin, I really appreciate you. Please tell me what's going on down at Lady Bird.
Yeah, and that's $1 million question, right? I mean, we got quite a few bodies that, and let's just we'll start with the most recent kind of event that's been kind of stirring down there. And there's this news claim, and I'm not trashing anybody here. I'm just saying there's a news claim out there that says there's been like 38 bodies since 2022. You got to remember, and this is just like as a friendly reminder, I don't doubt that there's a lot of bodies down there. And as you know, John, we're not blanketing the entire county here. And Travis County, like for those of you that know, is a pretty large space. So we have gone into the medical examiner data, we've filed requests, we've gone through the news accounts, and we've created like a really solid running database to keep track of this stuff. So with source material, so that if it's ever questioned or we need to add something new that we can verify, we can, because we already have a pretty substantial thing going on. But those 38 bodies thing, it's a little misleading, and I'm going to say why. When I see a news account, that really got my attention, because I'm down there pretty often right now. And, when you look at the headline for that, it says in and around Lady Bird Lake. That should be your first, I'm not saying a red flag, but I don't know how far this person, like how broad their scope is. And I bring that stat up because through Travis County's own data, and I get it, like we all get a little frustrated with government bureaucracy and inefficiency, but the one thing they're good at doing is collecting numbers. And we don't have anywhere near we don't even have that many drownings in the whole county for that time period from 2022 on, you know? So
Wow. Wow.
not in Lady Bird Lake. Now, throughout the entire county, yeah, it's like 40 something, but you got to remember, you got Lake Travis right up the road, which is a, kind of a dangerous body of water. People love to party there. They're on boats. They're, they're wakeboards, like, people get hammered, they do dumb stuff, they make bad judgment calls, and I'm not judging them for it. But that's why you see, typically a lot of drownings in those recreational areas. But Lady Bird Lake isn't really a recreational area, and that's why this is so weird. The other thing about that news account that was a little frustrating to me is that there's no source material saying, like, okay, like, where are these bodies and where are they pulling that information from? Now, yeah, if you broaden the net into Travis County, that could be true, but we have to remember, like, there's a very small portion of drownings that actually occurred in Lady Bird Lake. But when you juxtapose that against the total amount of accidental drownings per the medical examiner's own data, yeah, there's some pretty high percentages. To give you an example here on my screen, for 2023, for deaths in Lady Bird Lake, that accounted for like 46.15% of the total drownings, accidental drownings in the entire county. And we've always said, John, like, this goes all the way back from the first time, like, we've started talking about this. We either have a targeted situation or we have like a horrible public safety problem. Either way, that's a problem. You know what I'm saying? And since nobody's really addressing it, I think that from all the people I talk to down there, that is the biggest point of contention, is kind of the lack of transparency. Because, a lot of these people, when we're looking at these stats, right, like, it's numbers and all this information, and it's good to have, but this represents people's lives. It represents, systemically, like, their families, their kids, their friends, their loved ones. I mean, there's, when I see a fairly large portion of unidentified bodies, of adults especially, I mean, let's just face it, there aren't a whole lot of adults running around these days that don't have a fingerprint on file somewhere. I'm not saying from a criminal record, but it's not, yeah, you've got a large transient population, which, and some of those have occurred in Lady Bird Lake, some of those deaths, but there's still people, and there's not a lot of follow up. I'm not assigning blame, but that's part of the frustration, right? Like, people want to know what in the world is going on. And last time I was there, I was talking with a group of people, and, they're really frustrated with the police. And I can understand that too, but, especially when APD comes out with the 100% solve rate for 2023 or whatever it was, we actually dove into that, like, as a group. And we were like a body off. I mean, it was like 98.5%. And then we looked at that historical data from Texas County, or Department of Public Safety, Texas DTPS, and they actually have an above average solve rate for their crimes. So it's important for people to remember too that, the officers that you see looking into these crimes, and we know this from talking to, guys on stock that, those investigators don't always get to make the call of what gets reported or what doesn't, or how much information gets put out there. So I'm just asking people to give those guys a little bit of a break. The cops that I have talked to down there, they're not oblivious to it. Some of them don't have the training if they're younger, and that's completely understandable. But, they can only say what they're allowed to say. And we have to give those guys a little bit of grace, because they actually do have a pretty cohesive department down there. As to what's going on, though, like, how are all these people winding up? We have two lists that we've created, and one is the statistical drowning data, right here, which is super illuminating. Like I said, that 46%, and we go back 4 years to 2018, we had like 40%, 42% of those drownings occur in Lady Bird Lake for the entire county. Like, any public safety official, and as you know, I have a family member who's, a career public health person in a completely other state, but that was alarming to them, and it should be. And it goes back to that transparency and reporting thing. People are understandably super concerned because that's a huge number. That is a huge number. That doesn't, and we're not even including, the natural waterway deaths outside of Lady Bird Lake. So when we look at that stuff, we have the one list of statistics that are based off Travis County. And for anybody that's interested too, we bounce, we're in the process of bouncing that off of other Texas counties. All those bits of information aren't always super easy to get, but we're working on it. But we went up the road to Tarrant County, which is up there, Fort Worth, right? Like when you pull into their TCME data, I mean, holy cow, there you go into 1 year, there's like 300 pages in there, and you have to go through and sort it because there is a tremendous amount of detail. There's a person's name, their age, ethnicity, where they were found. There's a lot of information on accidental death up the road, where Travis County, and this isn't unusual, Travis County tends to aggregate that into blocks that are less specific, like excuse me, they don't have like the names and all the details. So we wanted to have at least 1 or 2 or 3 other data sets from the area to bounce that off of. And we got to consider too that Tarrant County has roughly double the population. So they do have a lot of drownings, but the difference being, and why you're not hearing anything out of the news up there, is because there's a lot of details. There's a lot of detail. I mean, holy mackerel, like it would blow your mind how much there is. And so when we look at Travis County, and we've got a separate list that includes Lady Bird Lake, and then an extremely narrow geographical radius of other waterway drownings that are either unidentified or fit like a victimology profile similar to Lady Bird Lake, or they're just completely strange that we don't have any answers for because there just isn't any follow-up. And that's where like it takes time to pull request information and all of that. So
Yeah, and when you're talking about alarming,
yeah,
I mean, you have all these people there that are dead, found dead, right? And I'm not saying they were murdered. I'm not saying they committed suicide. I mean, this is left kind of up in the air. We're not really hearing much or, any of the circumstances behind the deaths. It's just, pretty intense and scary stuff because the bodies just keep showing up. It's like when you think it's over, here's another body and you wonder what's going on there. So it is very, very, very alarming. What's alarming to me too is that we're not seeing or hearing of a second party, a second person. We're hearing of people being found, floating dead in Lady Bird Lake, but we're not hearing about Joe Schmo or Frank Smith or whoever, anybody you can think of, just anybody at all, being in the area to see anything when it happens, are we? I mean, nobody has witnessed anything here.
very few cases, very few. I mean, there is like a couple of witnesses that called in. I'd have to go through my notes to pull out exactly which ones, but by and large, no. you know and what's interesting too, John, is we do see some cases not in the statistical list but just in our close-in waterway deaths. This is what is puzzling to me, is by and large, as we've gone through this ladybird scenario, there's virtually no intel on any of this. Like, oh, they fell in, they drowned, alcohol, hello, goodbye, boom, you're done. But then I've found a couple of cases where they obviously did an expanded tox panel on some of these guys.
Okay, now you're talking.
Yeah, which is interesting. Like, And we also have two guys that were survivors to, one was a little bit older guy in his late 30s, and then a younger man, like 20, 21, 22, that suffered some horrific injuries, but wound up testing, they had other drugs in their system. And that is public knowledge. So again, like going back to the transparency and frustration angle, like, well, okay, like why are they pulling talk screens on some of these folks and not others? Man, that is a question I just can't answer. I can speculate about it, but I wish they would. I mean, Austin doesn't not have the money. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much money down there. It's crazy with all the tech and all the everything that's happening and the population increase. And that's another angle too. We have to consider again. This fits into whether it's a public safety issue or a actual targeted event or events. When we look at this stuff by the numbers and we look at the list, we can kind of correlate that with Austin's economic upturn, their population boom, which is very significant, right? Anytime you got more people floating into an area, it's a fun place. There's a lot of cool bars, a lot of cool music. People are going to party more, which just is going to tell you that there's going to be more accidents. I mean, what we're seeing here to me personally doesn't make sense there. But the other thing it does too, if we look at it from like a targeted standpoint, right? You increase the population, you increase displacement. And that's another angle we're working around this, because what does that do? And you fold in drugs, you fold in alcohol, you start to get vulnerable people too. So if you've got a predator cruising around that area, I mean, we've talked about this several times. I mean, those guys are so hyper acute to vulnerability. It just doesn't take much. And with everything that's happening down there, I mean, it's a target rich environment on both ends of that spectrum. So what is it? As you know, we have a working theory about it, but we can't just go, shouting at it from the rooftops. So we've got some hard evidence to support it. So right now it's just circumstantial. It fits with what we think, but it isn't proof. So we have to just be diligent about crunching these numbers and keeping track of this stuff, because I think it's important not only for the families, but it may come in handy somewhere down the line for law enforcement, which, for any of those guys out there watching, my door's open, my number's open. This is not, we're not gatekeeping this information. It's for anybody that wants it. And I think it's important to have that, because when you look at it, it's like, wow, it is alarming. Whatever it is that's creating this scenario is a pretty terrible series, multiple series of events that occur year over year. And it's, we've got a pretty good pattern of escalation. And, like you said, like, are we just going to sit back and, like just let this continually occur? That bothers me, like just the lack of follow-up around. I mean, there are a handful of families that are crying out for like, hey, give us something to work with here, because the puzzle pieces don't fit, and they don't fit for me either. And if that was my loved one, I'd be really pushing hard for some executive answers on it, because we've got a lot of dead people down there.
Yeah, we have a lot there are drug panels and there are drug panels. There's a regular drug panel, and there's a sophisticated drug panel. And, that sophisticated drug panel will show the rufinol and other knockout drugs, date rape drugs, whatever you want to call them, so hopefully that's the panel that's being used, that more sophisticated drug panel, not just a regular, drug panel. And the other thing too that bothers me, a couple things bother me, and I'll start with the idea of suicide. Okay, a lot of these could be considered suicides. I have a problem with that, because I have not heard about anybody leaving a letter. I mean, maybe God bless them. Maybe somebody has left a letter to their loved ones and why they've decided to commit suicide or unliving, as we have to say it on this channel. But I mean, there's no letter, you know, and granted, with most unliving situations, there aren't letters or with a high percentage. But with this percentage of people, this many people, there should be one, you
Yeah.
know, at least one, right? Then the other thing that bothers me is, so I'm supposed to believe a guy's up there. Now you direct me on the area. Rainy Street's up above, right?
So Rainy Street kind of sits like between I-35 and Congress Avenue. So it's kind of like right in the heart. Like if you walk directly north on Rainy Street, boom, you're hitting 6th Street. Like the university is just a little bit northeast of there. I mean, it's in downtown, so it's a massive population center on both sides of the river. I mean, downtown's on the north side, obviously, but yeah, it's super population dense, and it's literally starts at the water from that hike, the trail that runs east west along Ladybird Lake, and Rainy Street, like basically tees right off of that. I think it's East Avenue and Cummins or something. There's a little like a jog that it kind of runs into, but then it's a north and south street. So it's right there.
There's the other theory, that we're led to believe, or I guess, is that a guy's up or on Rainy Street partying, and then they decide to go down to the lake drunk and jump in the lake. That's one of the most polluted bodies of water in
Yeah.
Texas, maybe in the country. So, I mean, and knowing that one of the least uh, uh, unliving, I gotta say, unliving deaths of choice is drowning. Okay, if you want to get rid of yourself, one of the worst possible ways to do it is through drowning, and the vast majority of people that decide to unlive themselves, you know, do not choose drowning in like a the well, I'll just leave it at that. I won't get into the pollution because what's the reasoning behind it? They don't like to drown themselves. They'll find another way out. Vast majority. Okay. So we're led to believe somebody who wants to get rid of themselves gets drunk and walks down there and just jumps in, and then that's the end of it. Nobody's around, nobody's seen him. I haven't heard where two guys get together. Hey, let's go down by the lake now. They've had a few drinks. Come on, we'll go down by the lake and smoke a joint or something. I mean, I never hear of two people. I hear of a witness maybe seeing a body in the water or something like that, or somebody walked from one person. I think so. One person in the water, flailing in the water, or something, and he called for help. But other than that, with all these deaths, I mean, there's no letters, there's no witnesses. This is just, hey, let's go get drunk at the bar, and I'm going to leave you guys. I'm going to go down and jump in a lake and unlive myself. I mean, it's really hard. It's really hard to accept this, because as the numbers go up, which your data is right on, and thank you so much for all that data. I mean, you've really done your homework, and you continue to do your homework. But you look inside that, and the numbers keep going up, but the reasons don't, why the person
Yeah.
unlived themselves, right? So I mean, it just, it's definitely, quite the riddle. And, and then I say to myself, I wonder how many people, if we do have, only if we do have, I'm not saying there is by any means, but if we had a serial poisoner out there working the bars, putting, doping up the drinks, I mean, I think maybe we wouldn't have as many down in Ladybird as we probably would have in a hospital somewhere. I mean, how many, I'd look into how many were admitted to the hospital um, for over intoxication, um, or and what their drug panel, because they'll do a blood panel there, what their blood panel is coming back on them there. Maybe that would tell us more if there was more of a focus on emergency room visits too. Because I'd have to believe if you did have a serial, just pouring drinks all night and spiking them all night, that you'd have a lot more people than just the amount that showed up down at Ladybird, that they'd be being picked up by EMTs or something, or, showing up in some way at the hospital. We'd have more information on it. I mean, we just don't have, it just doesn't seem to be any information on it at all. And, you know, I guess we're where we're at until the next one. It kind of bothers me. It's kind of like school shootings. Like, we no sooner forget about the last one then there's another one. You know what I mean? We've become desensitized to school shootings throughout the country. Because it's just it happens so much, which is totally ridiculous. But this is a ridiculous situation too. Like, okay, Lady Bird Lake, and then when the next person is found in Lady Bird Lake, what changes? I mean, nothing changes. Nothing changes. Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, no, you're spot on about all of that, John. And that's, whether you're looking into it from an investigation angle, or you've got a family member, or you're a resident of Austin, all the way around, it's frustrating. And to your point about, somebody drowning themselves, my God, dude, there's drug deals going on in that city left and right. If you know what you're looking for, it takes no time at all to score fentanyl or, any number of drugs, X, versions of X, you name it. Like, that crap is all over the place. And when you look at the statistics of overdose deaths down there, like starting around COVID, I mean, it's a mind-boggling percentage increase. Mind-boggling, right? But here we've got, and that's the other thing too. And there obviously is drink dosing going on down there. But you, as an investigator, as you're talking about that, I'm in my head, I'm thinking, okay, like I know that's going on, but how did this many people get from a bar, like, to just wander down to the lake? I mean, it isn't like there's a slippery slope there where they could fall in. I mean, hell, it's basically flat. There's a couple of places you can walk down on stairs to a place close to the water, but it's, hell, getting to the water is not like a dangerous, it's not like a cliff, or, but even if that was true, like, I just, and there's so many people around, John. Like, when I'm down there with my contact and we're cruising around all hours of the day and night, I mean, hell, there's people down there all the time. And especially during the school year. I mean, there's people there constantly. So you're trying, to your point about the witnesses and all of that. Yeah. Like, these people are just all of a sudden they break away from the crowd and boom, the next thing sometimes days later or a week later, they wind up being found in the river. That doesn't make a lick of sense to me. The mechanism, like the logistics of that happening, yeah, once a year maybe. When we look at other cities, like, when we talked about this too, I think on another show, Portland, where we've got a tremendous amount of displaced people. Portland mirrors Austin in a lot of ways, and it always has. Yeah, you get some drownings, you get plenty of overdose deaths, you get some people that take their own lives, but you don't see anything anywhere close to this. And I use Portland as an example because it is kind of a good bookend, and I do have some good public health contacts there. And man, it's just it is a crazy situation. Could it be a public health thing that is just a horrible confluence of, you know, drugs, money, displacement, depression, whatever? Yeah, it could be that. But as an investigator, it just doesn't add up because there's nobody in the public arena there that is addressed. I mean, this shit is just unaddressed. You know, it gets reported on once, twice, maybe if you're lucky, and that's it. So
And if
I
depression, I'm sorry, finish.
no, you go ahead. I wasn't going
Yeah,
to add.
if depression, which is, usually the main disease that causes somebody to unlive themselves, right? If depression is that rampant there and that possibility exists, why are we not looking at doing psychological autopsies?
Right.
That'll tell you a lot. That'll tell you a lot, but we need family members or people that know the person, that have lived with the person, to give you the straight information.
Mm-hmm.
But that can be very, very that can be very, very helpful and maybe eliminate some of these suspicious deaths. Because that I'm just really very not only suspicious, just curious. Like, this is just kind of mind-boggling, and
Completely.
see. What would you like to say before we break?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to all the people, in your audience. Like, they're always awesome to, chat with in the comment sections. I also want to give a huge, like my little corner of the world here. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. So thanks for you for giving me a place to bounce this stuff off of. But, loaning me Pam Bogart too. I mean, she is fantastic. She's helped a lot with this, and so is my counterpart, Rebecca Burns down there. I mean, without those guys, I mean, this takes a tremendous amount of time. Yeah, we can talk about it and we can notice there's a problem, but when we start like categorizing this stuff and putting it on paper, it takes a lot of time. So I'm eternally grateful to those two, and you as well for giving this place, this information, a place to make its way to public visibility where we're talking about it and having a discussion about it, because we just can't let it hang there. It's just not right. So, yeah, just thanks to everybody for the support too.
And thank you. And yes, Pam Bogart is top shelf. Great
Yeah,
event.
she is. Yeah, without question.
Thank you so much. I want to thank our audience for having us today. We truly appreciate you. Most importantly, you guys out there, take care of yourself. Stay safe. We live in a violent world. Keep your eye open. And until next time, take care and God bless. Thanks, Dustin. Can't thank you enough. Really good.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's good to be here with you.